What will be the meaning of money after AGI? Will there be any purpose or need for money at all? Will it just be rendered obsolete, or will we still have a form of a medium of exchange, but will it just be an entirely new unit of economics than US dollars? I've seen some discussions on this, none that I'm particularly interested in, which is why I'm making this YouTube video. But I've seen people say things such as money will just simply not exist in the future. And then I've also seen, on the other hand, people saying things like the US dollar will be the final form of money and it's never going away. I think both of these, especially the US dollar one, never going away, is a little absurd. I think there is a middle path here, though. And I'll explain what it is in just a little bit. But a lot of these things that we have conversations about adjacent to this technology are either like maximally good or maximally bad. Like money's absolutely going to be a thing and it's going to be US dollars, or money's just never going to be a thing ever again. Or like utopia or dystopia. It's like people's brains only work in very binary ways around this technology. I think things are much more nuanced than a lot of people are approaching this discussion in. So let's start by identifying, why is money a thing? What are the mechanisms of the technology money that makes it worthy for at least today's paradigm? For one, it is a store of value. Number two, it is a medium of exchange. Number three, it is a universal account for value. So you can say $1 is $1, what is $1, right? And then number four, it can be used for deferred payments. So you can take out loans and stuff like that, which is actually, if done smart, intelligently, and strategically, that's a very high leverage thing to do. But those four things are very, very valuable for the paradigm that we live in today. And specifically, the value of storing value within this thing called money, or US dollars. US dollars is basically stored human labor, stored physical labor and cognitive labor of humans, right? And it's also a time saver. Like, as a medium of exchange, what does money do? Well, not only does it give you access to trading this little unit of value for goods and services without having to give up any goods or services that you have. You can just use this little medium of exchange for that. That's also very valuable, but also it is a time saver. Let's say you had the means of manufacturing a car yourself, but it would take a long time. Instead, you just want to buy the car because that time saving is so valuable to you, right? So that time saving is also where a lot of the value comes from money. Okay, so those are two very important things. Now, let's play out the hypothetical of AGI. In a not too distant future, almost all of us are going to have AGI at an individual level. Arguably by the end of this year, for sure by the end of next year, which will be pretty profound. Now, that'll help solve a lot of problems that individuals have. Like, there will not be a particular need that anybody has as far as survival goes. Anything that keeps somebody alive will be met. And that is as far as medicine goes, as far as housing goes, as far as food goes. All of the direct needs for survival will be met, and you won't have to work for them. Now, does that mean that the world is solved? Some people will stop there and be like, oh, we live in a solved world. Scarcity no longer exists. That is a post-scarce society. The world has been solved. I never have to work again. Blah, 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 blah. So whenever somebody thinks about that and they're like, oh, the game is over, the world is solved, I don't ever have to do anything ever again, I call that singularity psychosis. Because it assumes that the paradigm that we're living in today, once that is solved, that is the final paradigm of life. There is no bigger thing beyond this, which actually all of the evidence, all of our priors of human history from 200,000 years ago when Homo sapiens first walked across the earth, all of our priors say that, well, no, there's actually going to be another layer. You just can't see it. It's kind of like whenever you're looking at an interaction between two people and these people just aren't aware of what's happening. Like if you're very caught up with what's happening in AI and all of these people are having these conversations, you're like, oh, like these conversations are arbitrary. That's going to be replaced in like 12 months. And these people are over here talking about this thing and you're just like, you have this new layer of reality that you can view downwards onto that reality that they're living in, and they're not aware of the reality that you are living in. And the fact that they're not aware of it means that they don't even know it's there, right? Therefore, there's definitely realities to you that you are not aware of that are right there, and we are going to be going towards, but you will not know until you are there, right? So there is like types of ways of viewing the world that will inevitably come into existence that are not in the physical world right now. Not a single human thinks that way today, but it will be here once as we hit this sufficiently level of capabilities with technology. And now you're probably like, okay, Neil, that sounds very abstract. What do you mean by that? Well, I mean that humans have this intrinsic desire for wanting scarce things. And to assume the things that are scarce today, once as those things are met, that'll be all you ever want is simply not true. If you took Homo sapiens from 100,000 years ago and you put them where we are today, the world is already post-scarce. They couldn't imagine anything else. But if you let them adapt in the environment that exists today, I'm willing to bet they're going to feel just as scarce as you do right now, even though you live in something that's post-scarce compared to them. And they would come here and be like, wow, this guy is a god. He's the same species as me, but he's still basically a god compared to I am. This is amazing. I could have never imagined anything like this ever. This is post-scarce. Give him a decade or two. He'll adapt. And then he'll be like, okay, I want more. Welcome to biology. Welcome to evolutionary biology. We have these biological and psychological mechanisms programmed into us to keep us pushing forward, to make sure that we survive as a species. This is a good thing. So whenever we do meet this post-scarce reality, there will be new levels of scarcity that do not make sense to you right now that you will still want to have access to. And the resources in the universe always fall into hierarchical distributions because of entropy, because of evolutionary biology, because of science. There is no way to coherently get around it. You can try to implement something like communism, but then guess what? The civilization, the species collapses. So like, what I'm essentially saying is unless you have top-down control over all of the species, and you get all of them to uproot all of their evolutionary drivers to compete, to be a human, a living being that wants to push the status quo of civilization and their species forward, unless you uproot all of those mechanisms by having top-down control over all of Earth and then giving everybody gene therapies that ruins that, which I would argue that would cause all of our species to go extinct if you did that. Unless you do that, there will always be competition, which means resources will always fall into hierarchical distributions, which means money will always be wanted so that you can exchange for value to end up in a higher rung of that hierarchy. Because it will be hierarchical, period. It always will be. To assume that it won't be in the future is fundamentally misguided. Okay? And let me caveat this. Does that mean there will be literal authority over other individuals? Not necessarily. We might not actually have physical, literal authority over other individuals, but we will have influence. And that is almost the same thing. Because unless you uproot the biological mechanisms of humans, one human will always have influence over another human. And it'll, again, form another hierarchy of influence, not just material wealth. Now, instead of resources, it's simply influence, which is usually the influence follows the same hierarchy as the materials. So I don't necessarily think we have to have a thing where authority is like top down. I think it'll be very decentralized in the future, actually. But the influence of other people, therefore the resources of other people, will be distributed in hierarchical distributions. And to think otherwise is to have what I like to call singularity psychosis. Okay, let's move on from there. So, what does this have to do with money? What does any of this have to do with money at all? Well, we're always going to want to have some form of a medium of exchange. Why is that? Well, because I'm not going to want to build a car or a spaceship if we're talking about the future. If I'm building a spaceship myself, that would be very unvaluable. Because why would I build a spaceship when I can just buy one that's already built? Like, if we're going into a post-scarce society, removing the technology of a medium of exchange is a bad idea. Because now, the one thing that's actually scarce, which is time of being alive, that is the one thing that is actually scarce, is your time on this planet, in this universe. Once you start to eat that away, because now you're waiting on this thing to be manufactured, you are living a much more scarce life than having money to buy the spaceship. If you're building the spaceship at an individual level because you have the AGI to do it, that would take forever. I don't know how long it'll take, but I'm assuming it'll take longer than just buying it, right? So while you will have the resources to pretty much build anything you want, probably at an individual level, will you be able to build a spaceship without having like a manufacturing facility? I don't know. Maybe we have some like molecular nanobots that can build a spaceship out of thin air in the future. I don't know. That's very far out there. Could be possible though. I don't know. That's kind of like the only thing I can reasonably say there. Is like maybe we hit a point of diminishing returns before that. Maybe we don't. Maybe we do end up getting to that point. But nonetheless, I assume going out and just buying a spaceship will probably be something that takes a lot less time than building the spaceship. Therefore, I would rather buy the spaceship with the money because now I am receiving more value for less time, which that only is logical to me. I mean, I guess there's arguments that could be potentially against that, but it seems like the most logical outcome to me. Now the same thing you could do with compute. The individuals who have the most resources to either build something that can build compute or to just buy compute outright will be the individuals who have the greatest power or be the winners in the future, right? So now, if we play out the theory of constraints to the logical conclusion, the only limiting factor becomes energy. Because eventually, we'll be able to manufacture compute, we'll be able to manufacture technology in general at any pace we so desire. And we'll always be pressing against the upper bounds of the energy that we can capture and deploy. So what does that mean? Because even if, let's say we figure out some type of digital immortality, like we can digitize the human self, even then, the fundamental constraint is energy. Meaning that life is now tied to energy, civilization is now tied to energy, all of technology is now tied to the amount of energy that you can efficiently and effectively capture and deploy. So what does that really mean? Energy is likely to be the final version of the unit of economics. I think if you play out the theory of constraints to the logical conclusion, energy is the final version of unit of economics. And everything else is just tied to the pace that we can capture and deploy energy and expand throughout the cosmos and leverage the energy of it. So what does that really mean? Well, yeah, money will still exist in some way, shape, or form, but it will be different, to say the least. Now, before I get a lot of people with singularity psychosis in the comments telling me, like, dude, you don't get it. All of the physics, all of the laws of physics are going to break And we're going to enter this new plane of reality and a new plane of existence where we have 0 point energy extraction expanding across the Milky Way over the next few decades, and we turn the entire cosmos into computronium, and we live in this digital realm. Like, maybe that does end up happening. The time horizon at which that happens in, I am not aware of. I do think we are going to have this pretty, like, we're in this very big exponential. We've known this since the 1890s. We have been in this, or since the inception of life on Earth, we have been in a big exponential, right? And it's accelerating. And over the next few years, it's going to be accelerating so much faster. Nonetheless, I do suspect that the pace of acceleration will start to feel essentially normal. And some people have this idea that the singularity is an event. It's this thing that happens, it's a big event, and within a decade or a few decades, we have 0 point energy extraction. We are turning the entire solar system and in the entire galaxy into computronium. We exist in this digital realm, and then we have our ASI systems going out and expanding outwards for us, and we just live in this heaven within this digital realm. That could be possible. Very much could be possible. Or maybe you can decide to live in the external realm if you want to. I don't think it's going to be in the time frame of decades, a compressed period of decades. If something to that magnitude happens, it's going to take a little bit longer. I do think we could have some very significantly paradigm shifting technologies that arise over the next decades that will cause some very profound things to emerge. But one thing people need to remember is all of intelligence is made up of three things: compute, data, and algorithms. Eventually, we will hit a point of diminishing returns with the algorithms. Like, they'll become so complex that the energy cost to run those algorithms will be useless. Or not useless, but it'll be diminishing, right? And eventually, we will approach the Landauer's limit, which is it's the limits of how energy efficiency and computation meet those limits, and that's the most energy efficient compute you can have. Terrible description, but it works. And the next, there will be data limits. And all of our priors so far says, well, yeah, science and physics changes over time as we discover more things, but we know a decent amount right now. We will probably discover some more. Especially with the elementary particles, there's definitely some mysteries there that we have yet to discover, and we will probably discover some things there that like shift some things, and we'll gather some new novel data, novel evidence, and then that will cause the super intelligence, or the AGI, to become more intrinsically intelligent. Because here's the thing: unless you're gathering novel data by conducting novel experiments, the AGI level systems or the super intelligent systems will not be intrinsically super intelligent. If they're just making abstractions in English through a large language model, that's going to be very powerful. It's going to be a very, very useful tool. But unless you're gathering novel evidence by conducting novel experiments within the physical world, it's not going to become intrinsically super intelligence. Now, once as we start to hit the point of diminishing returns with algorithms and then energy efficient compute, which, by the way, we're very far from, especially the energy efficient compute. The algorithms, I don't know how far we are away from it, but the compute, we're pretty far from. We know that our little meat bags are like, they were on like 20 watts, something like that. That could be wrong. I might be embarrassing myself. But nonetheless, the hard part to really measure will be the rate that these systems can conduct novel experiments and gather novel data. Because the paradigm of living doesn't shift until we can reasonably accelerate the velocity of science, which I do think will come very soon, potentially next year. But how much is much harder to digest. And then eventually we will figure out where is the container of our universe. Where are the physical limits of the universe? Where the laws of physics reach? And we could find out, as some people that have singularity psychosis will say, all of our known physics is fake, which could be true. It really could be. But all of the priors that we have so far say that that's not likely to happen, which could turn out to be completely wrong. I would bet on it being right, though. But nonetheless, I just wanted to put a few different like perspectives out there into the ether so that people can think about things a little bit more nuanced than they have so far. So we're playing out a lot of hypotheticals here. And really, it all comes down to like, there's always going to be resources that you want access to that you don't have access to because you didn't have the medium of exchange. Even if we have like nanotechnology that can build up from scratch, having money will still be valuable. And that is a very out there assumption to say that like we'll have nanobots that can like build a car out of just the atoms around physical space very quick. Could be possible. Even if it is possible, we don't know if we're going to have access to that technology as individuals. It almost seems like people are going to try to clamp this technology down and limit how many people get access to it. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I just think there's a lot of fundamentally misguided assumptions, and the probability of all of humanity making it through the singularity is dropping whenever somebody goes around and says, oh, we should just opt out of the economy, dude. Everything's going to be abundant in the future. Cowabunga, dude. Singularity psychosis. Whoa. Like, whenever you opt out of the economy this early because you just think these things are inevitable is dangerous. And telling people to do that is dangerous. I think the best thing we can do in this time is actually maximize resources because we don't know how this is going to play out. Like, the only logical thing we can do is prepare. The only logical thing we can do is amass energy, amass compute, amass AI, amass robotics. And then, yeah, it might be a smooth ride going through. But to just assume that everything is going to be like cowabunga, kumbaya, let's let it play out. I'm opting out of the economy right now. I'm not going to have any resources because resources are going to be not needed in the future. Like, that could be possible. I don't think we know enough to arrive at that conclusion. Therefore, I think it's insane. That being said, I'm going to wrap up the video here, and I will see you in the next one.